I started with this issue a little bit by accident. I was doing a project spending a lot of time on higher education websites, and I came across all these reports that states were doing. It was looking at high school to college transitions. And they were at the higher education level, and 31 states had them by my last count. And they have some really interesting data. What they're doing is they're following all of their public high school graduates as they make the transition from high school into college by their public high schools. And they have data on things like college going rates, remediation needs by subject, the credit accumulation, GPA. It depends on the state, but some states have multiple of these, some states have all of them. So that said to me that 31 states are already doing this in their own way. So I started this research project thinking about how we could use that in a high school accountability system, because as Jamie laid out, there are lots of problems with the way we look at our high schools. No Child Left Behind is basically elementary and middle school law, and it doesn't really apply to high schools very well. So the report in your packet came out of all that, and I was exploring the possibility of using these new outcomes data to try to enhance the way we look at our nation's high schools. And as JB promised, I was successful in creating a more stable model. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but in the paper I go through data from Ohio and Oregon, and I lay out some pretty nifty scatter plots if you're into that kind of thing. What I do is I break schools down by whether they made AYP or not, and I break it down both by whether they missed it overall or whether they missed it for a specific subgroup. And what I found is that AYP is a pretty weak predictor of whether students will succeed in college or career. I also show that for individual schools, this has real consequences. There are individual schools that are failing AYP, but are sending a good number of students into college that are successful. And on the other hand, there are schools that are labeled successful under AYP that don't do a good job of preparing students for college. So I point out that these are really important consequences for individual real schools and that they matter. The key takeaway from my report comes from Florida, and what I did there was I used the data that was already available. Florida has a robust data system that they've been using for a very long time. They enhanced their accountability model over the years. They've added quite a few new wrinkles to it. They have an accountability system with rewards for learning gains, even at the high school level. They have praise for those passing it. They have specific attention on the bottom 25% of students, so they reward schools for paying attention to those students. And they also are one of the few states that are able, I shouldn't say able, but that have actually taken the opportunity to pair their school data systems with their unemployment insurance. Every state has an unemployment insurance system, and it tracks all of every employee in the state. The employer has to send back a record of their employees to the state, and the state keeps that data for the unemployment insurance system. So if the employee becomes unemployed, they can file for unemployment benefits. And community colleges have used this data source as a way to show their own outcomes because community colleges see themselves as preparing themselves for careers. But only a couple states have used this to look at their high school graduates as well, and Florida is one of those states. So because of this combination of both really good college data and really good career data, I focused my research on Florida to try to create a new model, because while most kids who graduate high school are going on to college, about 2/3 now are going directly from high school into college. There are still a small minority of students that are going into careers, and we still need to figure out how to deal with them in an accountability system. I created an index that's, you can see it all on page 8 in the report if you want to follow along. But basically, it has the existing system that I was able to get access to data from 2005, 2006, and I supplemented it with some outcomes data in terms of college going rates, the need for remediation, whether those students are able to pass remediation, the remedial classes. It's broken down by subject as well, so there's math and English as well. And then I weighted the scale so that there was an appropriate balance between college and careers. So on the college things, there was about the same ratio in terms of weighting between college and careers and the percentage of Florida students who were going into college and careers. So in Florida, their data system is able to collect about 62% of their high school graduates who are going into some form of college, and that includes both public, community, and four-year school. It includes out-of-state schools that they're able to get the data through partnerships with other states, and it includes private colleges as well. And then Florida has about 25% of students that are working full-time, according to this data system. I should make a caveat that these are all publicly available data, so they don't have student identifier information, and so we don't know for sure that there's no duplication. But based on the numbers, and it does seem to be that it matches both the overall population, and there doesn't seem to be too much duplication. So page 7 has the results of my index compared to what Florida was using in 2005, 2006. And what you can see is the solid line was their existing accountability index, and the dotted line was the one I created. And the more concentrated nature of the dotted line shows a greater stability year to year. These show year-to-year changes from what they were using in 2005, 2006, and what I created. A couple caveats I should mention. One is that Florida, like I said at the beginning, they're far ahead of most states. They've been able to implement way more accountability measures in a lot more developed ways than other states, and they pushed that forward. A lot of the measures that I mentioned, they're actually in the process of developing into their accountability system as a statewide basis. They don't have that created yet, but they're in the process, and it will be in place, I think, for 2011, 2012. But my results are promising, and I want to conclude by pointing out that it is possible in other states. The Data Quality Campaign says 33 states are now able to link their K-12 data systems with their higher education systems. All states could have the potential to link it to their unemployment insurance systems, and as I found in my research, 31 are already doing some form of this publicly. More are on the way to get these capabilities, with $245 million invested through the latest stimulus funds and statewide longitudinal data systems. So I just want to conclude my opening remarks by saying that high schools compel a different accountability model, and the investments that we've made are now making